Is everything okay? Why is the baby crying so much?
It's normal for preemies. The monitors show stable vitals. Try patting gently.
Okay, thank you.
What is this? It's glowing. I need to run more tests right now.
Every morning, the nurse weighed the baby twice. Not because the chart required it, but because her eyes didn't trust what they were seeing. The numbers were wrong. Not wildly wrong. Not enough to trigger alarms. Just wrong enough to feel deliberate. The baby lay quietly in his crib, too quiet for a child who was supposed to be healing. His cheeks had lost their softness. His skin clung tighter to his bones with each passing day. And yet, according to the records, he was being fed perfectly. On time. Every time. The father stood nearby, exhausted, hopeful, clinging to reassurances he didn't fully believe. The doctors said recovery takes time. The chart said progress was normal. The room said everything was under control. But the nurse felt it in her chest, that cold, tightening instinct she had learned never to ignore. Because babies don't shrink when they are being cared for. And whatever was happening to this child wasn't an accident. It was being done. By the time the sun reached the third-floor windows of the pediatric wing, the baby had already cried himself back into silence. He lay in a clear plastic crib, wrapped in a pale blue blanket that looked too big for him now. His name was Eli. 3 months old. Born healthy. No complications. No history that explained why his body seemed to be retreating inward, as if life itself was slowly pulling away from him. His father sat in the chair beside the crib, unmoving. He had been there all night again. The creases in his clothes told the story before his face did. Another evening slept upright, another dawn greeted without rest. His eyes followed every rise and fall of Eli's chest, counting breaths without realizing he was doing it. The monitor hummed softly. A steady rhythm. Reassuring, they said. Too reassuring. Nurse Clara Bennett entered the room just after 6. She moved quietly, the way experienced nurses do when they've learned that sound alone can disturb fragile things. She checked the 4-line first, then the feeding tube, then the chart clipped neatly at the foot of the crib. Everything looked right. That was the problem. "Good morning," she said gently, her voice low enough that it barely disturbed the air. "How was the night?" The father hesitated before answering. "He slept," he said. Then, after a pause, "But he didn't wake up hungry." Clara nodded, as if that were normal. As if babies didn't demand the world with their lungs when something was wrong. She lifted Eli carefully, feeling the lightness immediately. Too light. The sensation passed through her hands and into her chest, a quiet alarm that didn't ring loudly enough to justify panic, but rang all the same. She placed him on the scale. The numbers flickered, then settled. Clara stared. She reset it. Measured again. Lower. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. A narrowing. A calculation. She wrote the number down anyway, neat and professional, then returned Eli to his crib and adjusted the blanket. "How long has he been here?" she asked, keeping her tone casual. 17 days, the father replied. They said he just wasn't absorbing nutrients properly. Some kind of temporary issue. They say a lot of things, Clara murmured, more to herself than to him. She checked the feeding log. Every entry was signed. Every dose recorded. Every box filled. Perfect. She had learned, over years in hospitals like this one, that perfection often hid the messiest truths. The father stood and leaned over the crib, brushing a finger gently along Eli's tiny hand. The baby's grip was weak. Not absent. Just tired. He was chubby, the man said suddenly. Before all this. He had these rolls on his arms. His mother used to joke that he was hiding snacks in them. Clara looked up at him. Used to? His jaw tightened. She's not here. That was all he said. Clara didn't ask why. She had learned another rule over the years. Some absences were heavier than presences. I'm sure the doctors will come by soon, she said. They'll review the numbers. They do every day, he replied. And every day they tell me to be patient. There was no anger in his voice. Just erosion. Clara finished her checks and moved toward the door, then stopped. She turned back, her hand still on the handle. "Has anyone explained the weight loss to you?" she asked. He shook his head. "They say fluctuations happen." Not like this, she thought, but didn't say. Instead, she smiled softly. "I'll keep an eye on him today." After she left, the room felt smaller. Down the hall, Clara paused at the nurse's station and reviewed the digital chart again. The decline wasn't dramatic enough to trigger alerts. Not sudden. Not sharp. It was consistent. A slow, deliberate downward line. She scrolled back through the records. Different nurses. Different shifts. Different days. Same result. Clara leaned back in her chair and exhaled through her nose. Hospitals were built on protocols, but they survived on instincts. And hers was restless now, pacing in the back of her mind. During the afternoon feeding, she stayed in the room longer than usual. She watched the tube. Watched the liquid pass through it. Watched Eli's tiny throat move as his body accepted what it was given. Or seemed to. The father watched her instead. "Is something wrong?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. A fraction of a second. Long enough to be noticed. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. That answer landed harder than reassurance ever could. Later that evening, Clara stood alone in the supply room, holding a fresh feeding bag. She examined the label. Then the seal. Then the liquid itself, clear and unremarkable. She thought about the scale. The numbers. The way Eli's skin had felt thinner than yesterday. Babies didn't fade without a reason. And reasons, she knew, rarely announced themselves politely. As night settled over the hospital, the ward grew quieter. Lights dimmed. Voices softened. The kind of calm that invited trust. Clara didn't trust it. She returned to Eli's room one last time before her shift ended. The father had fallen asleep in the chair, his head tilted awkwardly to the side. Eli slept too, his chest rising shallowly, bravely. Clara adjusted the blanket again, careful not to wake him. As she turned to leave, her eyes caught something small. A detail so minor it could have been nothing. The feeding chart. The signature from the last shift looked different. Not wrong. Just unfamiliar. Clara stopped. She leaned closer, studying the ink, the pressure, the curve of the letters. Her pulse quickened, not with fear yet, but with recognition. This story wasn't about a sick baby. It was about something hiding in plain sight. And she was only at the beginning. The night had a weight all its own in the pediatric wing. Fluorescent lights hummed softly above, flickering at the edges as if they too sensed something was wrong. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the small, almost imperceptible tragedy unfolding inside room 312. Clara Bennett sat at the edge of Eli's crib, pen poised above her notebook. She had gone through the logs again, line by line, timestamp by timestamp. Every entry was meticulous, almost obsessively so. But something gnawed at her, a pattern, subtle and sinister, hiding in the neat rows of numbers and notes. Eli stirred, tiny fingers curling around the edge of the blanket. His eyes fluttered open, gray-blue and glassy, searching for warmth that should have been immediate, instinctual. Clara lifted him carefully, holding him close. His weight had dropped again, though by only a few grams. Still, the decline was undeniable. It's okay," she whispered, pressing a soft kiss to his forehead. The father stirred in the chair beside her. Sleep had drawn dark circles beneath his eyes, but his gaze was sharp when he caught her glance. "Did you find something?" he asked quietly, almost afraid to hear the answer. Clara shook her head, though her mind raced. "Not yet. But something doesn't add up." He exhaled slowly, resting his face in his hands. "I've been patient. I've followed every instruction. And he keeps shrinking. Every day a little smaller. I don't know what else to do." Clara met his eyes, and for a moment, the weight of the room pressed down on both of them. "I promise you, I'll find out. I won't let anything happen to him." The word promise felt heavy in the air, fragile as a whisper, but unbreakable in Clara's mind. As the night deepened, she returned to the nurse's station. The records were extensive: feeding logs, medication charts, growth reports. Everything suggested routine care. Every variable accounted for. Nothing abnormal. Yet Eli was disappearing. Slowly, relentlessly. Her instinct screamed, someone was hiding something. The next morning, Clara requested an urgent meeting with the attending pediatrician, Dr. Marcus Leland. He was a stoic man, known for his precision and calm demeanor. But even he seemed unsettled when Clara outlined her concerns. Eli's weight loss isn't normal, Clara said, spreading the chart across the table. It's gradual, consistent, deliberate. Dr. Leland frowned, tapping a pen against the surface. You're suggesting, what? That this isn't a medical anomaly? I don't know yet, Clara admitted. But the numbers, the feeding records, it doesn't align with anything I've ever seen. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. You're talking about negligence? Malice? Possibly, Clara whispered. Someone is manipulating something. I can feel it. Dr. Leland's face hardened. If that's true, this could be serious. We'll review the feeding protocols, the staff on rotation, every detail. And I want you there for the checks, every one. She nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. The investigation began subtly at first. Clara watched the nurses, noting patterns, observing interactions without revealing suspicion. Her experience taught her that people acted differently when they believed they weren't being watched. Sometimes, the smallest gestures, the way a hand lingered over a bag, the hesitation before signing a chart, revealed everything. By the third day, something had emerged. A new nurse, recently assigned, had been signing off on some of Eli's feedings. Her handwriting was close to that of the previous nurse but not exact. Small differences, subtle curves in letters, slight inconsistencies in pen pressure. Clara studied each line as if it were a crime scene, each mark a clue. She decided to wait for the perfect moment. The perfect moment came when Eli was asleep, the father finally resting in the chair beside the crib, his head tilted toward the monitor. Clara approached the new nurse, a young woman with a nervous energy that seemed out of place in the sterile calm of the hospital. Can I ask you a few questions about Eli's feedings? Clara said softly. The young nurse's eyes widened. Sure, Nurse Bennett. I noticed some discrepancies, Clara continued, keeping her tone gentle. Some feedings aren't matching the chart exactly. Can you explain? The young nurse hesitated, fingers twisting in her pocket. I just followed instructions, she stammered. I didn't mean to. Clara leaned closer. Did someone else give you instructions? Anyone outside the normal chain of command? The girl's eyes darted to the crib, then back to Clara. I wasn't supposed to say anything, she whispered. But I was told not to give him the full amount. Not all of it. Just enough so no one noticed. Clara's stomach dropped. Who told you? The girl swallowed, voice trembling. I can't. They said if I told anyone, they'd make me regret it. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to break. Someone was deliberately starving Eli. Clara's mind raced. Who could want to harm a child in a hospital? And why here, where every action was monitored, documented, and scrutinized? Her thoughts were interrupted by the father stirring. He had overheard enough. What? He asked, panic tightening his voice. What are you saying? Clara looked at him, her gaze steady. Someone has been controlling Eli's feedings. Deliberately restricting him. That's why he's shrinking. His face went pale. But why? Who would? She didn't answer. Not yet. Not until she had evidence. But one thing was certain, Eli's life depended on uncovering the truth before the next feeding. The day turned into a tense investigation. Clara followed the young nurse through her rounds, carefully noting every movement, every interaction. And then, she saw it, a tiny vial, hidden in a cabinet. Its label partially obscured, the liquid inside clear and harmless at first glance. But the markings matched the doses Eli had been given. Not enough for nourishment. Enough to keep him alive. Just barely. Her hands shook as she recorded it, photographing everything discreetly. She knew confronting the culprit now could be dangerous, especially if there were others involved. Someone in the hospital was working against them. Even as she prepared the evidence, a creeping dread filled her. Whoever was behind this didn't just want Eli sick, they wanted him invisible. Silent. Gone. The father returned that evening to the hospital, exhausted and pale. Clara met him in the hallway, dragging the photographs and notes behind her like a trail of breadcrumbs. "We found something," she said quietly. "Something that explains everything. But it's worse than we imagined." He gripped her hands. "Tell me. I can handle it." "You need to brace yourself," Clara whispered. "Someone has been deliberately starving Eli. Someone we work with. Someone who knows how to hide it." He stepped back, staggering as if the words themselves had physical weight. "No, no, it can't be. Not here. Not him, not anyone." Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know. But it is. And we have to act fast. Every feeding counts. Every hour counts." As night fell over the hospital again, Clara sat beside Eli's crib, staring down at him. His chest rose and fell, thinner than it should be, smaller than it should be. Every breath was a reminder that time was slipping, that every moment they delayed could be irreversible. Outside the window, the city lights blinked like distant stars. In the quiet hospital ward, a different kind of vigilance took hold. Clara's resolve hardened. She would uncover the truth. She would stop whoever was harming Eli. And she would do it before it was too late. Because by now, she knew one undeniable fact: Eli's life didn't belong to anyone but him. And no one, no threat, no fear, no hidden enemy, would take it away without a fight. And that fight was only beginning. The next morning arrived with a brittle chill that seeped through the hospital windows. The corridor lights flickered intermittently, casting long, jittery shadows across the walls. Clara moved quickly, purpose etched into every step, her mind replaying the night's discoveries. Someone inside the hospital had deliberately starved Eli, and now, the hunt for answers had become urgent. She pulled the young nurse aside once again, speaking softly so no one else could hear. "You told me everything yesterday, but we need details. Names. Times. Any hint of who is behind this?" The girl shook, hands trembling. I'm scared. They are dangerous. If I talk, they'll know," and her voice cracked, fear piercing the calm of the ward. Clara's grip on her shoulders was firm but gentle. "I won't let anything happen to you. But Eli, he can't wait. You have to trust me. Every second we delay, he gets weaker." Finally, after long moments, the nurse whispered a name that made Clara's blood run cold. "It's Dr. Hayward, the new attending. He's been covering for someone, maybe himself. I think he's the one giving the wrong doses." Clara's mind raced. Dr. Hayward was known for his charm and impeccable credentials, a man respected by everyone, seemingly above suspicion. And yet here he was, orchestrating a quiet, invisible nightmare in the hospital he worked in. The father arrived shortly after, his face pale but determined. Clara handed him a folder containing photographs, logs, and the nurse's account. He skimmed through the evidence, disbelief etching deeper lines into his face. This can't be happening in a place where my son should be safe," he muttered, voice shaking. "How do we stop him?" Clara exhaled slowly, her mind calculating. "We need proof beyond doubt. If we confront him too soon, he could flee, or worse, hide the evidence again. I'll stay with Eli tonight. You follow him discreetly. Watch who he interacts with. Every move matters." The father nodded, determination replacing his fear. For the first time in days, a spark of hope flickered in his eyes. That night, the hospital took on a different tone. The soft hum of machines became a tense symphony. Clara watched Eli, carefully monitoring every feeding. The boy stirred, and she whispered to him, fingers brushing his tiny hand. "We'll fix this. I promise." Meanwhile, across the ward, the father trailed Dr. Hayward. The man moved smoothly, confident in the way he checked charts and conferred with nurses. But subtle details gave him away, the way he lingered near certain cabinets, the almost imperceptible substitution of vials, the quick glances around the ward as if measuring who was watching. Hours passed. Each movement felt like walking on a tightrope. One wrong step, and everything could collapse. Back in Eli's room, Clara reviewed the logs one last time. That's when she noticed it, a timestamp that didn't match the others. A delivery recorded at 2:13 a.m., no signature, no verification. But it aligned perfectly with Eli's steepest weight drop. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't random. It was calculated. Precise. Almost surgical in its cruelty. Suddenly, a soft knock at the door made her turn sharply. It was the young nurse, eyes wide, breath shallow. He's coming here, she whispered. I think he knows I've been talking. Clara's mind raced. Hide the records. Lock the cabinet. And stay here with Eli. The door opened almost immediately after, revealing Dr. Hayward's composed face. His smile was smooth, practiced, but there was something in his eyes, a glint of warning, suspicion, danger. Good evening, Nurse Bennett, he said, voice calm, almost too calm. Working late again? Clara kept her voice steady. Yes. Just monitoring Eli's vitals. He had a rough night. Dr. Hayward nodded, leaning slightly closer. I see. Very responsible of you. But tell me, have you noticed any irregularities in the medication logs? Feeding charts? Anything unusual? Clara's heart thumped. She had anticipated this confrontation, but being in the same room with him was different. The man radiated control, a predator's ease that made the air thick. I thought I saw some inconsistencies, Clara replied cautiously, keeping her hands visible, calm. But I was planning to review them tomorrow. His smile tightened, a flash of something dangerous passing in his gaze. Tomorrow? Yes, tomorrow. That's prudent. Every muscle in Clara's body tensed. This was no ordinary confrontation. This was a battle of nerves, a test of who could remain steady while the other probed for weakness. Outside, the father watched through the slightly ajar door, taking note of every word, every inflection, every subtle movement. He was ready to intervene if necessary, but Clara had to take the lead. Suddenly, Dr. Hayward's expression shifted. He leaned slightly, eyes narrowing. I hope you know what you're doing. One wrong move, and this hospital, your careers, could be ruined. And young Eli? He wouldn't last a week under the wrong care. The words hit like a punch. Clara swallowed the fear rising in her throat, keeping her gaze steady. I'm not the one putting him at risk. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. The weight of the truth pressed on both of them. Then, Dr. Hayward's hand twitched toward his coat pocket. Clara's mind raced. Was it a pen, a syringe, something else? Every instinct screamed danger. At that moment, the young nurse stepped forward, trembling but determined. Stop! I know what you've been doing, she shouted. Eli's losing weight because of you. Dr. Hayward's calm facade cracked. His eyes flashed with fury. You dare accuse me? Before he could act, the father burst into the room, voice sharp, commanding. Back off, Hayward. One more step, and I call security. The tension snapped, electric, charged with the threat of violence. Dr. Hayward hesitated, his confidence faltering under the combined weight of witness and father. Clara seized the moment. She grabbed the records, vials, and charts, thrusting them into the father's hands. We have proof. We have everything. Dr. Hayward's eyes darted around the room, calculating, desperate. Then, without another word, he turned and strode out, leaving a trail of tension in his wake, and a promise that the war wasn't over. Eli stirred, eyes opening wide. Clara whispered softly, relief mingled with fear. It's okay, we're getting you safe. The father held Eli close, voice low but steady. You're going to be okay, son. I won't let anyone hurt you again. But as the night deepened, Clara couldn't shake a chilling thought. Exposing one person might not be enough. Someone had orchestrated this from the shadows. And as Eli slept, fragile and trusting, she realized the next confrontation would come faster, harder, and could cost them everything. Because now, the stakes were no longer just numbers on a chart. They were life and death, and Eli's fragile existence hung by the thinnest of threads. The following morning brought no relief. Sunlight filtered weakly through the hospital blinds, but inside, the air felt heavier than the night before. Clara's mind refused to rest. Even with Dr. Hayward's misdeeds exposed, a gnawing suspicion tugged at her instincts. Someone else had orchestrated this, someone who moved in the shadows, carefully manipulating the hospital's inner workings. She stood outside Eli's room, arms crossed, watching him sleep. Each shallow breath, each flutter of his tiny eyelids, was a reminder of how delicate life could be. The father paced behind her, his expression tight, jaw clenched. We have to know who else was involved. This was deliberate. Someone planned it from the beginning. Clara nodded, scanning the ward. Every nurse, every doctor, every janitor, anyone could have been coerced, bribed, or threatened. The realization made her stomach knot. We'll find out. But we have to be careful. Whoever it is, they are smart. They've been hiding in plain sight. It was then that the hospital's security footage arrived. Clara's heart pounded as she and the father sat side by side, watching hours of recordings, frame by frame. At first, nothing seemed out of place, regular shifts, routine walks down the hall, staff checking charts. But slowly, subtle anomalies emerged, a shadow slipping into the supply closet at odd hours, a nurse who seemed to linger unusually near Eli's room, a tray swapped with precision that no ordinary mistake could explain. And then, there it was, a figure Clara knew too well. Not Dr. Hayward this time. Someone taller, older, with deliberate, measured movements. Someone who carried the weight of authority without question, the hospital's chief administrator, Mr. Langston. Clara froze. She had seen him before, impeccable suit, silver hair, a smile that never faltered. No one questioned him. He was untouchable. But the footage revealed the truth. He had been orchestrating the sabotage, quietly manipulating schedules, switching feeding formulas, and even instructing Dr. Hayward when to administer smaller doses. The father's hand tightened around hers. All this time, he was hiding behind the system. Everything was calculated. Clara exhaled slowly, mind racing. He knew exactly how fragile Eli was, and he used that knowledge against him. This wasn't just negligence. It was planned, methodical. Someone wanted Eli to fail, to get weaker, maybe to coerce you, maybe to send a message. We have to confront him. They moved carefully, retracing the steps of the recordings. Each clip revealed more: Mr. Langston's interactions with other staff, his subtle manipulations, the way he avoided cameras while ensuring Eli's health deteriorated. The full scale of the betrayal hit hard. It wasn't a single rogue actor, it was an entire shadow network operating under the guise of a trusted institution. By midday, Clara had pieced together enough evidence to confront him. But the father, though furious, was cautious. We need a plan. If he knows we're onto him, he could flee, or worse, harm Eli. We can't risk another night like the last. Clara agreed, devising a careful strategy. She called in a trusted former colleague from the hospital oversight board, someone who could act as witness and authority in the confrontation. Every move was deliberate, every step calculated. Eli's safety came first, and this time, they would strike with undeniable proof. The meeting was set in the hospital's executive office, high above the wards. The father stayed near the entrance, ready to intervene, while Clara and the oversight official positioned themselves strategically. Mr. Langston arrived, unaware of the net closing around him. His smile was polished, his voice smooth as silk. "Clara," he began, "I hear there are concerns about the care Eli received. Let's discuss this calmly." Clara's gaze was unwavering. "Calm doesn't apply here, Mr. Langston. We have footage. We have logs. We know exactly what you've been doing to Eli." His expression flickered, just for a moment, but it was enough. The facade of authority wavered. I don't know what you mean," he said, voice tight, faltering under scrutiny. Clara held up her tablet, showing frame after frame of the footage. Each subtle act of sabotage, each deliberate misstep, was laid bare. His hands twitched. He had no room left to maneuver. "You thought you could hide behind your title, behind your power," Clara continued, voice sharp but controlled. "But Eli's life isn't a game. You underestimated the people who care about him, and the ones willing to fight for him." Mr. Langston's composure broke. His shoulders slumped, a shadow of fear crossing his features. I I did what I thought was necessary, he stammered. Necessary? The father interrupted, voice low and deadly. Necessary for who? For yourself? For your ambition? Look at what you've done. You've endangered a child. You've shattered trust. And now, you'll answer for it. The weight of the moment pressed down like steel. Clara felt her own pulse racing, the adrenaline mixing with exhaustion. They had uncovered the hidden hand behind the horrors Eli had endured, but even as they confronted him, a gnawing unease remained. Was this the end? Or just the beginning of a more insidious plan? Mr. Langston was escorted out, restrained by hospital security called in under Clara's guidance. The office was eerily quiet once he was gone, the hum of the building returning to its usual rhythm. But inside, Clara felt no relief, only the heavy realization that trust had been shattered, and the shadows of betrayal lingered. Returning to Eli's room, she found him sleeping peacefully, the faintest smile on his lips as if unaware of the horrors that had unfolded around him. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, voice soft, almost a whisper. "It's not over yet, little one. But you're safe now. We'll make sure of it." The father knelt beside her, voice trembling but steady. "We found them. The people who hurt him. But we'll have to be vigilant. They may have been exposed, but who knows what else they've planned." Clara nodded, knowing he was right. The revelations were just the beginning. The hospital's corridors, once familiar and safe, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows, each corner potentially hiding another threat. And as the afternoon light shifted through the blinds, painting the room in golden stripes, Clara realized the full gravity of their fight. Protecting Eli wasn't just about immediate survival anymore. It was about rooting out deception, challenging authority, and facing the darkest corners of human ambition. Because now, the enemy had a face, a name, and a network, but the fight to save Eli and restore trust had only truly begun. Night fell over the city like a heavy curtain, but inside the pediatric ward, the lights burned bright. Clara sat beside Eli's crib, tracing her fingers over the tiny blanket, her mind racing. The revelations of Mr. Langston's betrayal had shaken her, but the threat still lingered. She knew the hospital's corridors could hide more than one enemy. And though Eli slept peacefully, Clara could feel the tension coil in the shadows, waiting for the slightest misstep. The father paced the room, hands pressed to his temples, muttering under his breath. "We can't trust anyone now," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "They've been lying, manipulating, trying to break us." His eyes, dark and haunted, met Clara's. "I can't lose him again. Not like this." Clara swallowed, her throat tight. "We won't," she whispered. "I promise. We'll protect him, no matter what it takes." But even as she said it, the words felt fragile. Because promises are only as strong as the hands that keep them, and the enemy was still out there, hidden, watching. Suddenly, the intercom buzzed. A security alert from the hospital wing flashed across the screen, an unauthorized entry. Clara's heart jumped. "They're here," she breathed. The father grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "Stay behind me." Footsteps echoed down the hallway, soft at first, then louder, deliberate. Clara's mind raced. How many? Were they armed? And most importantly, were they here for Eli or for her? Then, a figure appeared at the doorway. A nurse, pale, trembling, holding a clipboard. "Dr. Harper, sir, you need to come with me," she stammered. But something in her eyes betrayed fear, pure, raw fear. Clara's instinct screamed, something was wrong. Before she could react, the lights flickered, plunging the ward into darkness. Panic surged like electricity. Eli stirred, a tiny cry escaping his lips, and Clara's arms went around him instinctively. It's okay, baby. It's okay." From the shadows, a voice, calm, controlled, and chilling, cut through the darkness. "Dr. Harper, don't move." Clara froze. The words made her skin crawl. She recognized it immediately, the tone, the cadence. "Mr. Langston. I warned you," he continued, stepping into the faint glow of emergency lights. His eyes were cold, calculating, and for the first time, he looked truly unhinged. "You think exposing me will end this? You think you can defy me and survive?" The father stepped in front of Clara, his voice a growl. "Back off. You're done. Eli is safe, and you're not touching him." Langston laughed, low and venomous, like a snake preparing to strike. "Safe? He's only as safe as I allow him to be." And right now, his hand twitched, and a small vial glimmered in the dim light. Clara's stomach dropped. Poison. Clara's mind raced. There was no time for hesitation. She lunged forward, grabbing the vial midair, the sound of glass shattering echoing through the hall. The vial slipped from her hands, skidding across the floor, but Langston's expression shifted from triumph to shock. "You'll regret that," he hissed. The father charged. Chaos erupted. The two men collided with a violent thud, their struggle throwing chairs and equipment aside. Clara clutched Eli tightly, pressing him against her chest, rocking him with trembling arms. Tears streamed down her face, not from fear, not from pain, but from the weight of the moment. The life of her patient, her responsibility, and her heart, all balanced on a knife's edge. Langston's grip was strong, but desperation fueled the father. Blow after blow, they fought, each movement measured, controlled, deadly. Clara could hear Eli's soft cries, the child too small to understand the storm raging around him. "Stay with me, Eli, stay with me," she whispered, rocking him, her voice breaking through the tension like a lifeline. Then, a sharp crash, a fire extinguisher toppled, spilling its contents across the floor. Langston slipped, and the father seized the moment, pinning him against the wall. "It's over," he growled, every ounce of fury and fear manifesting in that single declaration. "You're not touching him. Not ever." Langston struggled, rage and panic colliding in a terrifying dance, but Clara stepped forward, voice calm yet unwavering. "It's over, Mr. Langston. You've lost. The evidence is secure. Your network is exposed. And Eli is protected." For a moment, the man's eyes flickered, a brief shadow of the composed authority he had worn like armor. Then, with a final, defeated hiss, he slumped, restrained by hospital security who had arrived moments before. Clara sank to her knees, pressing Eli to her chest. Relief crashed over her like a tidal wave, but it was layered with exhaustion, fear, and gratitude. The father knelt beside her, his hands resting on her shoulders. "You did it," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You saved him." Clara rocked Eli gently, whispering reassurances she didn't fully believe yet, but hoped he felt. "You're safe now, little one. No one can hurt you again." Eli's eyes fluttered open, and he reached out, tiny fingers curling around her hand. A smile, weak but real, spread across his lips. Clara's own tears fell freely, unrestrained, as she held him close. In that instant, all the fear, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, they all melted away, replaced by the fragile, powerful glow of life preserved. And as the emergency lights dimmed, the hospital slowly returning to calm, Clara realized something profound. The fight wasn't just about Eli's survival, it was about hope. It was about courage. It was about standing for what was right, even when the odds were impossibly stacked against you. Because in the face of darkness, one brave soul could ignite a light strong enough to pierce the shadows. And tonight, that light had not only saved a child, it had changed lives forever. The morning sun spilled softly through the hospital curtains, painting the room in warm golden light. The sterile smell of antiseptic had been replaced by the comforting aroma of fresh linens and gentle coffee from the nurse's station. Clara sat in a chair beside Eli's crib, her hand resting lightly on his tiny chest as he slept, finally calm and healthy after weeks of terror and illness. The father, pale but alive with exhaustion, leaned against the wall, his eyes softened now by relief rather than fear. "Look at him," he whispered, voice trembling. "After everything, he's okay." Clara smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "He's more than okay," she said. "He's thriving. And it's because he fought, and because you never gave up on him." The events of the past days still clung to them like a heavy fog, the poison that had shrunk his fragile body, the betrayal that had nearly destroyed trust within the hospital, the nightmarish confrontation with Langston. But in this quiet morning, those shadows felt more distant, more manageable. Eli stirred, opening his eyes slowly. Clara's heart jumped. "Hi, little one," she whispered. He cooed, reaching for her hand with tiny fingers. The simple connection, his trust, his innocence, his need, hit her with a force stronger than any threat or danger they had faced. The father approached the crib, kneeling on one knee. He watched Eli's fingers curl around Clara's hand. "You kept him alive," he said softly, voice choked. "And you saved me too, in a way I never thought possible." Clara glanced at him, recognizing the raw emotion in his eyes. For weeks, he had carried the weight of failure, of guilt, of helplessness. But now, here he was, alive, present, and fully aware of what had truly mattered. The world outside the hospital walls, with its corporate battles and power struggles, felt irrelevant in comparison to the small, fragile life they were protecting. The father's gaze shifted to Clara, lingering longer than necessary. "I owe you more than words can ever express," he murmured. I don't know how to thank you." Clara shook her head, smiling through exhaustion. "You don't need to. Eli is enough." Outside the room, the sounds of the city were beginning to stir, honking cars, distant footsteps, the faint hum of life continuing despite everything. But within these walls, time seemed to slow. Clara felt the weight of the past weeks, the fear, the near-death experiences, the constant vigilance, begin to lift. Every night of terror, every sleepless hour, every moment of doubt had led to this, a fragile peace, a chance to rebuild. The father finally exhaled, leaning back against the wall, eyes closing briefly. "We've been given a second chance," he said. "And this time, we won't waste it." Clara nodded. "We'll make sure Eli grows up knowing safety, love, and that there are people willing to fight for him no matter what." As if on cue, Eli yawned, stretching tiny arms, and his small smile broke through the tension that had clung to the room for so long. Clara laughed softly, a sound of relief that had been missing for weeks. "You're going to be just fine, little one," she whispered. Weeks turned into months. The hospital buzzed with new energy. The poison had been fully eradicated from Eli's system, his body slowly regaining strength and normal growth. Regular checkups showed miraculous progress, and Clara's care had been instrumental in his recovery. Each milestone, first steps, first words, even simple giggles, became a celebration of survival, resilience, and hope. The father, too, changed in subtle but profound ways. The fear that had once consumed him, the helplessness that had haunted his every decision, began to fade. He became more attentive, more present. Nights that had once been dominated by worry and panic were now spent reading stories to Eli, teaching him the world through patience and love rather than fear. One evening, Clara sat in the nursery, watching the father cradle Eli in his arms. He hummed softly, a lullaby perhaps learned from his own childhood. The trust between them, forged in fire and tested in blood, was palpable. Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a quiet, steadfast joy that replaced the adrenaline-fueled panic of their earlier struggles. It was during these months that the true healing began, not just for Eli, but for everyone involved. Clara's courage had sparked a chain reaction. Exposing Langston's operation had led to his arrest, dismantling the network that had threatened countless lives. The hospital reviewed its protocols, implementing tighter security and better care procedures, ensuring that no child would ever face the same danger again. Clara's own life transformed as well. She became a respected figure at the hospital, known not only for her medical expertise but also for her unwavering courage. She continued to care for children like Eli, ensuring that the most vulnerable had someone willing to fight for them. But she also learned to let others in, to accept help, to share the burden, and to embrace the quiet moments of joy that life offered. And as for the father, the once tormented man who had lived in fear and despair, he discovered that true strength lay not in control or power, but in love, in vulnerability, and in the ability to trust those who fight beside you. He became a father in the truest sense, attentive, protective, and endlessly patient. Years later, Eli would remember none of the terror, none of the poison, none of the nightmarish threats. All he would know was the warmth of Clara's embrace, the steady love of his father, and the sense of safety that had been won through courage and sacrifice. Clara watched him one afternoon, the sunlight streaming across his rosy cheeks as he toddled across the room, laughter spilling from his lips. The father stood nearby, hands resting gently on her shoulders, and for a moment, they simply watched him, alive, thriving, and unbroken. "You did it," the father whispered again, though now his tone carried awe, love, and gratitude intertwined. "You gave him a life." Clara smiled, brushing her fingers through Eli's soft hair. "We did it," she corrected softly. "Together." In that quiet moment, the city outside could rage, storms could strike, and dangers could lurk in every shadow. But within these walls, the family had found their peace. They had faced darkness, endured trials, and survived the impossible. And now, with life renewed, hearts healed, and bonds strengthened, they could finally breathe and finally live. Because sometimes, true victory isn't about defeating your enemies. It's about saving the ones you love, letting go of fear, and finding hope when the night seems endless. And in the soft golden light of the hospital nursery, with Eli's laughter echoing and hearts finally at rest, Clara and the father knew that this was only the beginning, not just of life, but of love, resilience, and the quiet, enduring strength that comes from never giving up. Please subscribe to the Anna's Romance Stories for more interesting stories.